Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Strider with my first Stratego video in years. It's been a long time, but glad to be back at it. Um, Chances are that if you're watching this video, that you're already familiar with the new site that most people have been playing at, Strategus, which is, in my opinion, better than the old Stratego.com site. Probably first and foremost because there's an active developer who does a great job. He's very active, makes a lot of good updates. He's active on the Discord and actually, pays attention to what people care about and are asking for. And it's really a pretty neat site to play the game. And one of the latest updates he did was he actually put a new streamer mode in for, if you've played a game and you want to go in and do some post-game analysis. So that's what I've done here, and I decided to choose a game that I played against Ironshield about a month or two ago. So Ironshield reached #1 on the leaderboard and then decided to apparently retire from the site based on a message that he sent to several people. So this is a game that I played against him before he ended up leaving the site, and I thought it was kind of an interesting game, so thought I'd give it a shot at a post-game analysis here. As a lot of people probably know, he's a fairly defensive player, tends not to go in the attack until he has a sizable lead, and he's known for being a pretty good bluffer. Can be a little bit of a tricky player, tends to do some odd, strange things in his setups, and can be kind of a difficult player to read. So I think for that reason, he tends to be pretty high in the rankings. So with that, we'll go ahead and start the game. A little bit about the setup here. Obviously an open flag setup with not too usual flag placement. Since I know that he's a fairly defensive player and isn't prone to like lotto or anything, it kind of makes sense to have an open flag so it's a little bit less predictable. I'm not worried about him just like charging down and blitzing or anything. And, I have, strong pieces in position to attack after I get some information, quite a few captains up front, which isn't anything unusual, but one of those things, like, you don't want to be overly obvious with the setup, but you also want to be in position to attack once you get some information. So with that, I will get into the game. Pretty standard opening here. He tends not to hit too many pieces, so I'm going to do a pretty standard opening, just hit anything with the captain. I end up finding a major early. Not really overly concerned if I lose that sergeant. Guess I could have just hit the scout. I could general blitz if I really wanted to, but yeah, I figured there wasn't going to be anything strong here, so I thought maybe I could get a small piece. It ended up just being a scout. Well, not really the best use of a captain here, but a little bit of pressure on the right side. So he does tend to shuffle around a lot. Downside of shuffling is you end up moving a lot of pieces. He's not really gaining any position or anything. He's really just kind of losing ground. Okay, so this is a known sergeant. Hit for info, get a mine. That's really not too bad. I discover another major. Push with the scout. It's kind of interesting. So he's saying that this is a good piece, but okay. And then a third captain discovers a bomb here. I'm personally really not a fan of, these front row bombs, especially when they're not on the edge. I mean, they really just tend to get in your way more than anything else. I'm a little bit tempted to just go in and pressure this major, but I don't really have a lot of information. He is going to scout the colonel. I don't think that's a good piece, so I go ahead and pressure. And it would have been nice to get something other than a lieutenant, but especially since I don't really have a clue what this is. Kind of hinting for information. I decided to just take the marshal to try to get some information here. I figured that's probably not going to be the spy. I get a couple pieces for it. I've now gotten 2 captains back. Okay, so apparently that was a known lieutenant that I'm running away from, so memory error on my part. That should have been a free piece. That's kind of the fun thing about watching the replays on this site is you can see where some of your memory blunders were. Here I am running away from a known lieutenant. So I'm being a little bit risky with the marshal here, really just using it for positioning. Okay, I finally scout it, and then I say, okay. And I don't think that this is the spy either. So just kind of bring an unknown piece up just to see what he does. The piece just kind of applying a little pressure, seeing what he does. Here, discover a miner. Now shuffling around. So I think at that point I just decide that it's highly unlikely that that piece was the spy. You know, like I said, he likes to bluff a lot, and I don't think he would have been using it to protect a lieutenant. It really just would have been too risky with this other piece that was coming in, because if this was my last captain or a major or something, I could just come in, do quite a bit of damage, and have a scout behind to threaten, and it really would have just been way too risky for a spy. So I ended up deciding that that lieutenant was unprotected and ended up being a free piece. So at this point in the game, I'm not doing too bad. With my martial pressure, I was able to get a couple captains back, so I'm only down 1 captain, and I'm up a couple lieutenants and a minor now. So pretty decent shape. He does have an information advantage on me, but between his bomb kind of blocking him off here, and then my marshal controlling the center, he's kind of at a spatial disadvantage as well. I end up taking that minor. So I do respect this piece as a potential spy. I want to try to get that major. Now, I'm a little surprised I didn't just hit the major, because that was the piece that he bluffed as a spy earlier. I didn't buy it, and come to think of it, it wouldn't really make much sense for it to be his marshal either. So I think I would have been pretty safe to just hit with the general, but there I am running away with it. So since I have a material advantage, it's okay for me to bring in a power piece and hit for information, because then I still have a material advantage, and then I have some information to go with it. So I've now 2 squared this major. But just the way he's behaving, I'm a little bit suspicious of this piece in the corner here. It hasn't moved yet, but Ironshield is too good of a player to let people really two square a piece like that. So either he made an uncharacteristic mistake, or or it's a trap. And I end up thinking that it's a trap because I haven't discovered any power pieces yet, and it's like I said, he tends to do strange things in his setup, and I'm starting to think that one of these might be good. And he has used this like a J9 Marshall in other games before that I've played against him, and I'm a little bit worried that this could be the Marshall. So at this point I'm trying to get information, and I'm almost oh, I'm basically ready to just kind of use this kernel here to take something, because if I end up discovering a power piece, then that's going to allow me to really press over here. So I'm really not in too bad a shape. If I end up losing that kernel, I end up getting another lieutenant for it here. And I believe that I decide to... I do respect that, but looking back, I really think I could have been a little more aggressive with that kernel. So I'm continuing to hit here. I get a couple free pieces. Like I said, at this point, I'm really... Okay, Scout ends up just being a kernel. Like I said, I could have been more aggressive. I only have one scout left now at this point. 10k, discover a captain. That's not the best. Continuing to respect this piece as a potential spy. A little bit risky here because he could come down in lotto, but like I said, this player tends not to lotto very much. Obviously, if he did decide to lotto, he could have really did some damage here, but... Alright, kind of a blunder on my part. I ended up losing a minor for pretty much nothing. I didn't want to try to trap this. I'd really like to trade kernels, but I also didn't want to trap him because he might be tempted to start hitting around here and lottoing. Because I definitely don't think he'd want to trade kernels, but he might not want to take the risk of hitting a bomb either. So I decided to bring the miner up to see if I could try to get any kind of information here. End up finding a bomb. It's taken by a sergeant. I've at least got this major pinned over here. General's being kind of useless at the moment, especially for being a known general. Continuing to respect that he has defense over here for his colonel. Of course, I have to be careful with the general because I don't know where his marshal is. It's obviously looking like he has an open flag unless he happens to have a corner bombed-in flag over here, which probably isn't the case if he has a bomb right here. So I'm thinking it's definitely an open flag. Just kind of a lot of shuffling around here. A little bit of a positional game. And yeah, I think I just wasn't buying that was a good piece. Like I said, I'm really suspicious that this or here was a good piece, especially this piece. And then I'm thinking that one of his other power pieces would probably be over here. So I think I decided to just call it with, basically just to call here and hit the position. Because if it did end up being one of his good pieces from the back row, and I know it's a back row piece, typically you're not going to find a general or a marshal from the back row. Like I said, Ironshield is known to do weird things like that. So it definitely was a possibility with this particular opponent. Although, if it turns out it would have really let me press an advantage, especially if it ended up being his marshal. Then I could have just come in and did a lot of damage with this general, most likely. And even if we traded generals, I could have brought the colonel up and really did some damage. So it wouldn't really been too big a deal if I had lost that colonel from a few moves back. Just kind of going back here, but yeah, because I decided not to run away with the colonel and just to, you know, and then I decided just to end up hitting with the major, which actually ended up making more sense because both his colonels are known, so I didn't have to worry about hitting a colonel, obviously. And obviously, if this was a good piece, it probably would have just taken the colonel. So at that point, you know, it's a pretty free hit for the major, which ends up being his fourth minor. And at this point, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should have bombed my flag in after all, because if he ends up losing his last minor, then I wouldn't have even had to defend anything. Bringing the sergeant to do pressure here. And we end up finding the marshal. That's a pretty good trade there. Okay, now my general here can start doing some damage. Just kind of pinning him down. Now this here's the problem with these front row bombs. I mean, look how pinned in he is. Like mobility is so important in the game with Stratego, and this bomb is really just in his way. I mean, he ended up getting one of my captains for it, which was just an early game captain, so it wasn't really a big deal losing it for me. And you know, not only do I know a total of 2 of his bombs, between what's known and what's captured, but more importantly, he's got like nowhere to run. Like his position is just pretty poor. You know, I now know his marshal. He's having a really hard time defending this colonel because, especially since I can start bringing this general in, move the colonel in. He can't even move his colonel in to defend here because his other pieces are in the way. He's really just in a tough position. He probably has an open flag. I can start bringing some of these miners up to start testing and hitting here. This captain's in a lot of trouble. It's really just a tough position for him. Thought about moving my marshal up to try to get him out of there, but then of course his colonel could escape. Although I could potentially take some of these smaller pieces here, so he still would have been in pretty rough shape. So I probably could have ended up, but I decided just to hold the position for now because I basically am controlling the majority of the board, which obviously gave me a huge advantage. Colonel, he's going to move. End up taking the spy. I decided to just trade because I have material advantage anyway. And at this point, I'm really thinking that this might be the general. And now this piece moves and threatens. I probably should have just brought my major and pinned that captain and taken it. Of course, I don't know for sure what his general is, but I'm thinking it's this piece. I think with the different sequence moves, I definitely could have taken that captain, though. I ended up taking that sergeant. What I should do here is I should bring the colonel over and then just bring the general up. That way I can end up taking that major. And even if it ends up trading up generals, I'd still have the 2 square with the major and could still go in and take it. Actually, no, I guess I couldn't because he had the space to come up and avoid the 2 square. And I think at this point he either resigned or ran out of time, but obviously a pretty winning position for me here. Up, down a captain, but up a lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 2 miners, plus the spy, which has value just for being a scouting piece. His colonel's known, one of his majors is known, captain's known. he really had no way to defend. I mean, he can bring the major over and take this minor, but once I bring the general up, he's basically forced to trade or lose more pieces. Like, I'm in a really good position to keep control of this area of the board, start bringing some of these smaller pieces up. Unfortunately, a lot of my smaller pieces are on this side where I'm kind of pinned down. I don't know for sure what this piece is, but I'm guessing it was probably a major, so I really had nothing over here to threaten that. And if he had decided to come in a lot with this captain, he could potentially do a lot of damage. Fortunately, the flag was relatively well protected. He wasn't posing any threat to it in the least bit. But the middle where I really had a lot of free range was pretty much a cluster of bombs. So there was a little bit of risk just from that regard, but it was still a pretty dominant game position. And this major here, I probably could have swung it around and put a little bit more pressure on this captain, or see if I could force a trade here. Obviously, I could have gotten this other major into the game, I think, without really exposing my flag too badly. He did have one scout left, so I had to be a little bit careful of that. I guess I never did confirm that this here, was his general, but I really think that it was. I really think that that was a trap, and he was trying to get me to come in and take that major. It was really just too convenient that he allowed me to, two square. It's possible that his general could have been somewhere else, but and I'm really curious to know, was that actually the general? But I'm like 95% sure that it was, because it really just makes sense to me. So never ended up finding out. I'm not sure which piece was the flag. I'm guessing that it's possible the flag could have been this piece here behind what I think was the general. Certainly a very possible piece. I don't think I know Ironshield doesn't typically do bombed in flags. It's he had four unknown bombs, so it's possible that it could have been a bombed in corner flag, but I highly doubt it. I'm guessing it was probably just open here. If I had to guess, I'm thinking I don't know, probably one of these two pieces. He could have done something silly like bombing a piece or something, but chances are, yeah, it didn't really matter too much in the end. So, he was not the top ranked player at the time when we played this game, but I think I still ended up getting quite a few ELO points from this win. And he's technically no longer the top ranked player because he's been inactive for over 30 days, so he's dropped off the leaderboard at this point. That is one nice thing about the new site, is that it encourages people to stay active and play games, because if you don't play a ranked game in so many days, you end up dropping off the leaderboard, although one ranked game per month really isn't that much for too many people. But at least the majority of the higher ranked people are playing at least on a somewhat regular basis. They might not be playing every day, but you can look on the leaderboard and see the last time they played, and most of them are playing at least somewhat. So hope you enjoyed watching. I thought this was a fairly interesting game. Hoping to get on and start doing some more of these post-game analyses more often. I really like the studio feature in Strategus and how it allows you to do these replays, and you can go back and look at moves, see what pieces have been taken and captured, which pieces have been revealed or moved. You can go back and forth. You can play at different speeds. The streamer mode's really useful for doing this kind of video, because it doesn't show who won the game until the very end, and I guess in this case it doesn't really show who won, but I can tell you that I did, just because he ended up running out of time or resigning. But yeah, on the unlikely event that you haven't actually played on the Strategus site yet, I highly encourage you to check it out. Link will be in the description below. So definitely check it out and play some games, and feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you would have done differently in this game. Thanks for watching.